few things they wanted about the show. The hospital was already being built, and they definitely wanted white walls. They didn't want stands and lighting everywhere on the ground. They wanted to integrate it as much as we could. And they knew they wanted it handheld because they wanted that documentary feel and that flexibility. When I met with everyone and I met with John Wells, it was like, I think we should be someone in the middle of it. Right? We should be almost an invisible doctor that's following everyone and never, be ahead or whatever. So you have to, we're just on their back. Sometimes you're just following from the hospital and then you track them from the front. Always about their perspective and what do they notice. And there's a lot of handoff. I cannot compare this show to anything else because it's its own thing. We really had to think differently than the way we shoot things normally.
Hi, Johanna. Good morning or afternoon. Where are we talking from here?
You still morning, Los Angeles. So
Okay.
yeah.
And it looks quite sunny, though not on fire, I hope. Everything's okay over there?
Yeah, we just actually got off a lot of rain. We had flooding yesterday. So believe it or not, it's the extremes here.
It's like if it's
either one
not
or the other.
one thing, it's something else. Well, thank you for talking with us today. And I think I'd love to focus on the Pitt, but I wanted to talk about other aspects of your career. Can I start by potentially embarrassing you just a little bit? Maybe you won't be embarrassed, but
I can take it.
you can take it. Okay.
Yes.
This is a quote from Savannah Block about you. And if anyone ever wrote that about me, I think I would retire because it's the nicest
funny.
thing.
I have no idea what quote.
Oh, you don't know what it says? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm gonna read
She's
the
a
whole
close friend
thing.
of mine, so I'm gonna call her after this.
Joanna has a unique eye that I want around me on every project. From our very first collaboration, she brought endless ideas and visual inspiration to the project. She doesn't just engage in the image to make it look good, but to understand the needs of the story and the emotions of the character, using her craft so artfully that the visuals become a non-invasive extension of the psychology of the characters. She is articulate in her communication and an absolute professional in her ability to execute the vision no matter what the budgetary restrictions may be. A gem on set, Joanna creates an atmosphere that allows actors and crew alike to do their best work. Without Joanna's intuitive sensibilities, our film would not be the stunning moving picture that it has become. Wow.
That's a really nice quote. I'm actually gonna call her to say thank you again.
Yeah, well, it's funny reading about you. You talk about getting under the sort of psychological or emotional skin of the material. And
Yeah.
that can be something easier, more difficult, depending on the kind of time frame you have, the kind of collaboration it is. But talk to me a little bit about what that's like from project. Like, how do you say this is the sort of emotional core and how it informs how you might want to treat it visually?
Yeah, it's funny. I think, the way I process things and for films, I choose the visuals. I really have to understand the story and the characters before, which seems very logical when you say it that way. But it's the only way I can really picture things. So I love the psychological aspect, and I always say I would probably have been a psychologist if I hadn't done cinematography. But I like to find common areas between both, and so I love to understand what the character is going through, what are the motivation, what's going inside the head. So then visually you can create an environment where you make the audience feel what they feel inside. And that's why I always call that the visual psychology, right? How do you create something, an environment that makes you feel what the character is going through? And I always base, my cinematography and my story on this concept. And it's been working pretty good for me so far to really picture the right things for the right character if I can understand them. So really dig in, with the writer and director before to understand what are we trying to say about these people and where are they heading and what do they feel. So then we can really dig in on how to visually bring that to the audience so they can feel the same thing.
And do you find that it's like more directors than less have sort of an open-minded approach to how to express their work visually, or are there people that have very sort of I don't want to say rigid ideas, but just come to the table with you know, or even storyboards. I mean, there's a certain, like, it runs the gamut from let's see what happens and shoot it almost like a documentary to no, this is the series of shots I've conceived in my head. Here's the storyboards. So how does that process and that collaboration work with you from director to director? Because I'm assuming you're all meeting together and working some of these things through prior to cameras rolling.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's such a vast range of directors on this point you're just making. I've worked with directors that have the shot list really precise in their head, and the vision, the tone, everything, they come with this and it says, can you, help me make that precise vision? And, it's so interesting to work with these different type of directors, because when you get into that case where it's all lined up, they're extremely visual people already, and they have a precise idea, then the creativity for me is how can I really get in the head of all the visuals and then
Mm-hmm.
bring that in the technical aspect, right? And then you work with director on the complete opposite, who are, they just really based more on the performance they want to get out of it, and like, the storylines, but they don't know yet, or they don't have a precise idea of the tone and then the visuals they want to do for it. So I feel like sometimes I almost, keep bringing them all these pictures and shots ideas and all of that, and then we really create that together, but they're a little more laid back on this. And
Mm-hmm.
then you have kind of the midpoint director that is half and half, right? That really focus a lot on the stories and character, but also, knows a lot about visuals and want to be really fully collaborative on it. So it's a full collaboration. We design the shot list together, we find the tone together, etc., etc. So it's different every time. I like the range because it makes me focus on different things with different type of directors. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's good to not just have the same way. Like, I don't like just to take over the visuals and do it myself all the time. It's not, I like the collaboration, because I think you grow the best ideas by talking about them and that collaborating together. So that's kind of, the perfect range is when you have a director that has an idea, but then you kind of discover together the tone and then the visuals with the script.
I've been a camera person for 30 years, and I fell in love with cinema. I heard there was free film school in France, and I wanted to get into the French film school. I really didn't know anything at the time, but I knew at least how to take pictures. So I said, I'll try for the image department. And then when I miraculously got into the French film school, I fell in love with working with the camera. You're following what's going to be in the movie. So that immediacy that the camera allows is what I loved from the beginning. I'm Kirsten Johnson, and this is my course about documentary cinematography.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, if that's why they're
yeah.
hiring you, in theory, right? I mean, even if they have an idea of how they want this to look and feel, they wouldn't bring you on just so that you can hit go on the camera. They want, your expertise is what maybe, well, you know what about this? And you try an alternative, or, I don't know. It seems, coming from an editing background, I've sort of prepared to lose 100% of the battles that I wage. So I know, and the material's already there. So you see it and it tells you what you've got and tells you how to put it together on some level.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are directors who are like, no, do this, 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 and shame off. He's got a frame too long, and you're like, oh my god, you just like end up like being an operator. But then there are people who are like,
Yeah.
I don't know, this isn't as dynamic as I was hoped it was when we were shooting. What is there? What ideas can we come up with? To do something that we didn't maybe get right. And it's nice to have someone say like, I'm bringing you in because you can address those problems, or you can come with ideas. And I would assume it's not totally dissimilar in your discipline.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that's always the expectation I have. I always feel like I'm brought in to help create the visuals and not just coming to execute the visuals. That's not, that would take the creativity part of the cinematographer. But what I found is when someone has a very precise tone and shot list and ID, I always end up being able to talk about things, and then sometimes they realize what they were envisioning was not always the right thing. So by talking and collaborating, forcing the collaboration, I still, like for whatever makes sense on the script that doesn't read for me the way they saw it, we can talk about it. And sometimes they're like, oh, you're right, actually, that would read better that way. And sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes their idea makes more sense. And then we just hit with the idea, you know what I mean? But I think you still find your way to find the collaboration if someone is very set on the visuals. Otherwise, it's not the collaboration. And then that's not especially something I want to do. You know what I mean? I think the idea that someone would just be a wall and block to any ideas you offer or discussion, then maybe that's not the right project for me, because I'm not a technician. I'm a creative technician, right?
Right. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, that's the thing. Look, every picture that I saw reading up on you has like a shoulder rig and you're carrying, it's like it's a technical art. And
Yes, it really is.
so there is something to that. You operate generally yourself also?
Yeah, on film that I do, not on TV shows because it's multi-camera of the times, but otherwise I do, yes.
Yeah, that imagine you've got some good shoulders there, right? Like
I
that's
used to. I don't know, after the Pitt, I haven't been operating.
so okay, so you just gave me the little segue. The Pit is it's really, I've watched some of the material. I haven't watched. I'm still trying to figure out what the hell's going on Severance season 2, and I have to go back and watch the entire first season again.
I just rewatched the full first season because I completely forgot about it, and I love that show. And so I went back and rewatched all season 1, and now I'm on season 2.
Is that a new streaming strategy to make
I
you
think
watch
it's
an
more
entire?
than, yeah.
I don't know. It's like I watched the first episode of season 2, and I'm like, I don't remember any. It's like I was severed from the show, so I had to go back.
Well, it was 2 years and a half ago. I mean, I didn't remember either. 2 years and a half is a long time to, like, it's like reading a book. Like, would you remember if you're halfway through, but what you read a year and a half ago?
And so we just
Yeah.
rewatched the season, and now we're going in. But that's anyway. Imagine trying to remember ER from 30 years ago to sort of. I'm not saying they're related, distant cousins, maybe, the Pit and ER, right? Because of Noah Wyle and the creators and things like that. But much different experiences and a more mature. Well, I don't want to call it more mature, but it's different in the sense that it's like taking everything that came before it in terms of serial television and, sort of what happened since the original series that has nothing to do with this one, technically, but the evolution of television into a form and then resulting in something like this, which is, sort of a very immediate, yet it feels like film and TV at the same time. I don't know how to describe it. So talk to me a little bit about how how this happened, and then what it's like to be the only DP on all 15 episodes, the visual style of this thing, and like just being like way too close to some very graphic things that like are going to make me very upset to think about in my head.
We're still upset about it.
So how did this come to be?
Yeah, well, I heard about the show actually a year ago. That they were in the writing room and writing it, and I knew it was a medical drama. I've never been pitched that it would be a sequence of ER, and it was never meant to be that. The Pit was a brand new show. Yes, it had Noah Wyle and then John Wells and Scott Gimel, and they're all part of ER, but I was a fully different show they were making. And so that's the way I've always heard it, and that's honestly the way it feels. I don't, I don't think they're similar at all, and I think you really feel it's a new show. So when the first time I read it, I loved the concept that it was continuous. Like it was a 15-hour shift for 15 episodes, on one season. And I thought that was brilliant because then you get to really experience things in the hospital or things with the doctors that are real time. And you are stuck in that range. You cannot fast forward. You cannot go backwards. It's like, we do go backwards a little bit with the flashbacks, but I'm just saying, in the way you have to experience what their shift feels like. And I love that concept. I thought that was very fresh. I thought it was really well written. The dialogues were good. The characters, were very interesting. And so, I was really excited to interview for it. And so I went through a full interview process for the show. When I started it, though, I actually didn't know it was a sole DP position. I thought it was a 2 DP position. And I learned that on the first interview. And what they explained to me is that it was very important for them that they would keep 1 DP for the whole show because they needed to keep that consistency throughout the episode because it's a continuous day. And because there would be different directors coming in and out of the show, they needed a base that was never going to change and follow, the constant of where we were heading every time without having, switching different visuals and all of that. So that made sense to me. And I actually love that, because you rarely get to follow the story from beginning to the end as a director of photography on the show. And, the whole concept was to shoot it in order as well. So in that way, it felt so important to understand and to remember the blocking for everything, because when you jump from one episode to the other, where did it land on the previous one, and when did you start on the next one? And what was the lighting doesn't change much inside the hospital, but we have to keep track of time, keep track of where we are, what did it look like before, etc. So speaking of tracking time, there was also a big element is that if you start at 7 a.m. and you finish at 10 p.m., you want to make sure you feel the time going slowly, but it's happening, right? So that was a big concept that we really wanted to work on, to feel the change of time throughout the episodes. It's super settled because a lot of time, we're just inside the ER and it's kind of underground a little bit. And we have very few windows giving on the outside. So it's happening like every episode, we would move the lights a little bit, and as you get closer to sunset, it gets warmer and all this. Then you have twilight and night. But, inside the stage, you'll have to look to see it, but it's very settled and it's happening, which is so interesting. No one probably would know except everything. But
you
if
have
you
to,
watch,
the attention to that detail, you feel that, even if you don't, if it doesn't jump out at you, to say like, no, that's important, whether it's something that's obvious or not. It's part of the rule book. It's part of what's happening here. And you did shoot it in sequence, or mostly in sequence?
90% is shot in sequence, yes.
Okay.
So, we would have, episode 2, like scene 1, 2, 3, 4 on the first day, and then, et cetera, et cetera. So there's only, if it's a location or there was really conflict with a kid or something, then we couldn't shoot that scene in sequence, right? But the rest is all in sequence. And that's something very
how long
rare.
was the shoot took? How long?
Each episode took 9 days of shooting. And we did 15 episodes. We started early July. We just wrapped last week.
So, okay. So
8
I'm
months.
just like from a continuity perspective, it's 1 day of bags under your eyes, facial hair never grows. So you're shooting this over almost a year, not like
8 months. Yeah.
And so their hair has to be exactly the same.
Exactly. The continuity on hair and makeup is incredible, because we're talking about it with the hair and a makeup artist, and they were saying, people think it's easy because it's the same haircut and same makeup on them every day, but it's actually extremely hard for them to keep that track and consistency throughout 8 months.
I would
was
think
really
it's
hard.
incredibly hard. Plus, they all have to age just in terms of what a 15-hour shift will do to you.
Exactly.
So that's, because if you said, oh, we shot it in a week, well, that's one thing, but you shot it over months and months. So you just wrapped. Are they not done?
We just wrapped last week,
But and the episodes are coming out week to week. It's not like a Netflix thing where they're all at once.
Yeah, it's weekly. That's correct. Yeah. So we just had episode 7 airing yesterday. Yeah.
Okay. I am jumping on this, by the way. I'm going to watch this as soon as I'm done figuring out how to understand Severance again.
There's a lot of shows coming out right now. Just watch it before White Lotus comes out.
Hey, I'm too down. White Lotus lost me seconds. First of all, I didn't like it. It was always guilty pleasure first season, because it was like, oh, great, rich people having problems. Who care? It just, it's sort of like a movie where it's like a movie about actors and stuff, when you're just like, I don't care. I mean, that's just obviously a personal preference.
Yeah, it's definitely its own thing for sure, but yeah.
Yeah, but I watch it anyway, but I'm not in any hurry. I don't have a water cooler. No one's gonna blow it for me. I think we're gonna watch it at our own pace. But are you excited about that? Is that?
I like White Lotus. Yeah, I've been watching the 2 first seasons. I watched the third one. But I think I'm curious to see how they keep it new, because they keep the same concept in different places, and I just want to see how they keep it new. So I think that's interesting.
Right.
But yeah, sorry. So going back to the peak, after the interview process, and then I actually came out. I knew a few things they wanted about the show. So I knew the hospital was already being built. and they definitely wanted white walls, you know,
Mhm.
which is very scary when you hear that as a cinematographer. They said we're gonna have white walls everywhere. It's gonna be really bright.
Mhm.
They wanted to be able to use it as a live theater. That was already a concept that, you know, they didn't want stands and lighting everywhere on the ground. They wanted to
Okay.
integrate it as much as we could. And they knew they wanted it handheld because they wanted that documentary feel and that flexibility, right?
Mhm.
So this was things I knew coming in. And then, you know, what they didn't know exactly was how did they want to shoot it really, you know, how did they want it to perceive, to follow that story. And that's kind of the pitch I came with when I met with everyone and I met with John Wells. It was like, I think we should be someone in the middle of it, right? We should be almost an invisible doctor that's following everyone. You just should see what they see when they see it, and never, you know, be ahead or whatever. So you have to, we're just on their back sometimes. You're just following for the hospital, and then you track them from the front, you know, and then they see something, so the camera leaves them and then go back to them. You know, it's always about their perspective and what do they notice. And there's a lot of, you know, handoff from like, oh, I'm here, I'm looking at that person back there, and then the camera goes there, and then you follow that person, and it keeps going, etc., etc.
Mhm.
So that's kind of, you know, the pitch I did, and I think they felt it was really fitting the scripts and what they wanted, and so I you know, that's how I came on board, and we talked more in details with John Wells about, you know, the framings and what are the rules of the show, and you
Mhm.
know, we really wanted the camera to stay close to our characters, so we always respect, you know, we never really too far in a long lens. It's more like wider lens, closer, but lens that still don't feel like wide lens or anything like that, if that makes any sense.
You shot the whole thing on a 16? Wait, what?
No, and actually we shot full frame. So we used the Alexa Mini LF.
Okay.
So we used, like, one of our main lens we use is a 50 millimeter. So
Right.
50 millimeter on full frame is like a 35 millimeter on super 35,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, yeah.
So it's kind of the perfect wide portrait lens, but it doesn't feel deformed or anything like that. You just feel very close to the character, which was something we wanted. But yeah, we use a large format for the camera because we wanted to still feel, you know, but it would still feel cinematic. So you still have kind of the out of focus, you know, and that shadow depth of field, but also it makes them isolated, you know, inside the pit. And that's something we really wanted to feel. It's like you only see what they see, and we wanted to make sure that visually it feels that way. So that's why we kind of went with that concept. And we're shooting 2 cameras. So our first camera is on primes. And the reason I wanted to use primes was to keep these specific lenses. Like, so like we would not switch nonstop, right? Like the 50 millimeter is our main lens. That's how we follow them, etc. If we really need like a precise moment where there's intimacy with another character or something specific happening to them, you gotta get a close up on the 75, you know. So we just had some rules like this we established with our first camera. And, you know, the way I mean, I know you haven't seen yet, but the camera really tracks in really long walk and talks, and then go with a gurney rushing in, and then it gets into surgery, like it just keeps going. So we needed a device that could allow us to move that fast, handheld, sometimes backwards, but also be able to change the height of the camera, because sometimes, you know, it gets low with the gurney and then looking at the
Right.
patient, and then it gets back to their face, right? So we used a tool called the ZG rig. I don't know if you heard about it before. So it's basically a Steadicam vest with a Steadicam arm, but it's a new device they made that you know, goes on that, and so you have full control, but it still feels handheld. It still like has the shake of handheld, but you can control it way better. And then you can go up and down, right, and do like this like Steadicam, but it looks handheld.
Do you have,
So
can you
that's
like dial in how handheld it looks, or is it like,
No, I mean, it's about how much you control it or not. I guess you
okay.
could get it looser by, you know, letting it go a little more. But it's a really hard device to control. And our camera operator, Erdal, is incredible with the rig. It's super hard. I put it on once and I was like, it's so heavy. And it's so hard to control, and he's so precise with it. It's very impressive how he's operating that thing. But
Yeah, it seems like a 50 is like, you know, I mean, I guess if it's equivalent to 35, you said, then
yeah.
handheld, but it would be to me, the idea of that would be like so risky because it would be so shaky, getting around.
And but that's why we had to use that device, because you do that handheld, you know, even though if you're really good handheld, if you go backwards and this, you're gonna feel the steps, right, a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not a it's a kind of handle that disconnects you, because then you feel there's another person outside of the character, and I think that's a problem. So that rig still feels handled, but it feels like it's the handle of that person, right? You don't feel the step of the operator or anything. So the tool has been incredible. And we have our second camera on a zoom, but it's a perfect match to the prime. We're using Engineer. So Engineer, Optima Prime, ultra compact zooms from Engineer. And it's a very light zoom with the right range to have the 50 and 75 in there. And the reason we have, so Amy Sulik is our second camera operator. The reason why we have her on the zoom is because she kind of steals little piece in the shots. So the main shot is designed with the first camera, right? Following around, tracking everything that's happening. So it's a 360, you know, so there's not a lot of place to hide in general. But then the second camera would hide in a hallway or something and grab a moment of the two people passing by, you know, just a cutting point. Sometimes we need these things between takes, etc. And then she would run around, go hide behind the table, you know, zoom into the other side she need, and then grab another moment during the take. So that's the way we've been. Yeah.
Was this also a pitch of yours? Because you said, I think I was reading that like you were almost thinking about becoming an editor. And so you bring a bit of an editor's mind to cinematography, which would, I mean, that connects the dots to having a second person for coverage in a situation where you're really shooting it like a verite documentary, right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, you know, it was the thing. I mean, also we're shooting about 9 to 10 pages a day, you know, and we shoot that in less than 11 hours.
That's all?
So,
come on, that's not.
And less than 11 hours. We don't even do a full 12.
That's unreal. Okay, so all, I guess better that you're not resetting lights everywhere, because you couldn't. You just, there's no way.
Well, we wouldn't have time, but also, yes, there's no lighting on the ground. We're not waiting for lighting or cameras ever. You know, we're always ready, basically. So we really keep going. It's very strange for the actors too, because the moment we block, we're shooting 5 minutes later, you know, and then we switch shots, and 2 minutes later we're ready for that. Like, there's no, the only real like coordination on our part is working with background and crosses, you know, because there's gurneys in front of the cameras, and then we pass through furnitures, you know, and then we have to see something medical happening, and then you follow the other characters that grabs us. So coordination and choreography is mostly what we have to work out, you know, on the camera side. And then, you know, lighting. So we have a little bit of lighting happening, but it's all like moving with us. So we have electrician with a pole, you know, with a battery power light that follows the camera, or we have little lights on the mat box of the camera. So nothing is static. It's all moving with the movement. So you can go everywhere, basically. And we have a full live background happening, and, you know, yeah.
To reset that though, are you doing a lot of takes, or is this like a show where it's like you're doing 2-3 takes max every time?
It really varies, you know. If it's a simple thing, we would just do 2-3 takes. If it's a complicated shot where, you know, sometimes we really covered 3-4 scenes, it has happened before, together in one shot, you know. And even though if it gets cut a little bit in the edit, the shot was shot like this. So that's more difficult to coordinate, because we would go through a full stage. Like, we would start on the North Corridor, Central Station, go south, go through a room, you know. So, but everything works together at that moment. Requires a little more tech sometimes, because, you know, there's one thing that didn't work, or on the timing of, you know, background or anything.
There's something nice about shooting, the momentum that you get and the actors get and the story gets, but now, you know, versus shooting it in little tiny pieces. You know, they sort of, it does feel almost like an extra theater experience.
Yeah, we call it the live theater, that, you know, even just the cast, the way they have to learn the lines entirely, like, you know, we just keep going. Sometimes we combine a few scenes, and it's a live theater. It's a mix of documentary, live theater, narrative, really. That's really what it is.
Oh, that's amazing.
But I've never shot that way before, you know. I don't think most of the crew had either. It was very much a new experience for everyone on set, including actors, to do it that way. I cannot compare this show to anything else, because it's its own thing, you know. We really had to think differently than the way we shoot things normally. Like, again, there was no marks on the ground. Like, it's nothing moves on set except things on wheels, right? So the walls don't move, the furniture don't move, but the crash cars move, the gurney moves, you know, anything that's in a real hospital would move, moves. But the concept, like, we don't have anything else moving, because we need to be able to shoot it like if it was a real location. And that's the concept of it.
Yeah, no, do you think so? you feel ultimately that that helps the authenticity? Because sometimes, you know, like if you were to shoot in a real airplane, it would be a nightmare. You know
I
what I mean?
agree.
But if you, you know, it's like, so sometimes too real is a problem. Here, it's like, you know, what do you think? Because it seems like
I
everyone rose to this experience and had this sort of intense shift.
I think it was definitely a challenge in some situations, but at the same time, it forced us to stay in the concept of the documentary film because you can't cheat it too much, right? You can't just lift up a wall and go back and zoom in. You know, it's not, we always had to be like, this is where the camera really could be in a real place. And I think that really helped us protect the style. I think if we could move things around, it might not have looked the same way. And I think that forced us in that, you know. I think it was a good thing.
Yeah.
Also the speed, you know, you start moving walls around, it doesn't, you would never shoot as fast as we did if you start doing
Yeah.
that, you know.
No,
It's
that's
not
the thing.
possible.
It's like the sort of challenges that you had versus calling them obstacles, whatever you want to call them. Like they sort of pointed you towards a process that reinforced the material, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Yes, yes. And you know, there was also a fear of continuity because if you start moving things around too much, you know, it's a continuous day. Like you can look strike, even though we have two script supervisors on set because there's so much going on, right, for a continuous day. But if you start moving things around or taking, like, you know, it might never land back in the right place, you know, and that's also a problem that we consider. So, you know, things roll around like gurneys and stuff, but it's things that move no matter what in the hospital anyway. So that didn't matter. You know, it's funny. If you watch the show, there's a lot of glass everywhere. It's we have, you know, doors with glass windows in there, and all these windows in general, but at all glass. So one of the challenge on a set like this, and especially on the live theater aspect of it, is reflections for the crew.
Sure.
It's been it's been interesting. So we have windows that gamble, you know, that help us a lot. But to be honest, you can't get rid of all the reflections. So the production had the great idea to put all the crew in scrubs.
That's awesome.
So we all wore scrubs for 8 months on
Yeah.
set.
That's fun.
And we
I
had the
thought you were gonna say
colors.
like you were all wearing like black bodysuits or something to disappear, but no,
Well,
why
the
not?
scrubs are black, you know, but
Uh,
so they're actually different color of scrubs for different positions in the hospital. So
mm,
different departments had different colors. So it wouldn't be all doctors or all nurses, right? So the camera department, we were doctors, we were all wearing black. You know?
and then the
Then you have
sound
people
department,
in gray.
they were
They
all
were in yeah, they were in the like I forgot what's the name of the department. The people I think who do all the I don't know how you say it, but
well,
blood.
if I know anything about how soundies are treated, I'm sure they were orderlies or janitors. That sound
But
department never gets
well,
any.
actually, no, actually, they were also doctors. Sorry, but
Uh-huh.
different type of doctors.
Mhm.
You know, some were nurses. Anyway, it's funny because we completely melted with the background. Like on set, you would not know who was the crew or was the background, and that's what they did the concept because we did catch us a few times in the window. So not the camera, obviously. If it's the camera, they have to take care of it in post. But at least, you know, let's say the camera didn't see itself, but then there's the grip following, you know, to make sure the camera goes. And then he got caught in some windows sometimes. You would never know because he
No,
didn't help it.
that's great.
So yeah,
That's
we were
great.
all in scrubs for months. It was really interesting, and it made everyone feel like together. You know, we look exactly like the cast and the background and the crew, and the background was here for 8 months too because it's all one day, right? So you
All
don't
right.
switch background every day. It's the same background for 8 months, so they're really part of the family as well.
And where was this shot? This was shot in California?
Warner Bros. We had two stages at Warner Bros. In Burbank. So yeah.
Mhm.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. It gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career.
Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, and being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved the classroom. I loved the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now. Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
That's wild. I didn't think about that. That if your background, you have an 8-month job as background. Like
That I've never seen that before. That was the first, you know, the same background for 8 months. You know, it's
yeah. Is
And they
this
really were part of the cast, it's crazy.
Well, that's the thing. Everybody's part of this experience. It seems like it's very like much a lockdown. Nothing's. I mean,
Yeah.
the director's changed. You said right. So
Yeah, but they come back a lot. We had 2 directors that did 4 episodes each, and then most of the other directors did 2 episodes each. So they would come back. Yeah.
right. It may
but
not be
it,
not the most director dependent show. Also, it seems like you have a sense of the visual style. The actors understand the performance. I'm not saying the director's not important, but like part of a bigger team. Like
yeah, but it's funny because 2 of the directors are also producer director on the show, and they've been involved since the beginning to the end. They read every single script, they saw every cut, so they were completely part of it and the story. I feel like but even the other directors who came in as guests, I feel like they were part of the full process, and they all had their own little things they brought to the show, which was really nice because in a way it flows through, but you feel a little bit something different in each episode depending on who directed, and I thought that still felt like a whole. So no, I thought the directors were honestly fantastic, and they just really understood the show, and they were on board for the visual side and the way we shot it, and I think that's why it works so well.
it's great.
They didn't try to come in and change it. They were like on board with
Right.
the concept of it.
No, that's good, and it's like
yeah.
I feel like it's always weird when a director comes into an existing series and tries to put their sort of unique stamp on an episode of a show that like I don't know. It's a very strange. It sticks out. Actually, it's like sort of, it interrupts the flow in a way of the show.
I agree, and to be honest, because obviously they have some things they prefer or not, and sometimes I was not sure if the producers would like the new things they're trying to bring in. I always make sure we get the shots that we need no matter what. So even though in the director's cut they might not use that, it exists if they needed to put it back more in what they need in the show. I always try to support the vision of the director, but also make sure we have the pieces that I know sometimes we use more in the show. And so that's kind
you
of
have
what I was trying
just
to make
sort of
sure
a mental sense of what you need, and as you're getting it, you're just like, I know we've got this, or do you have a way of like sort of having an inventory, having notes, shot lists, and things like that, or is it really just you're in something like this, you're in your head saying, I got it?
Yeah, no, it's all in my head, honestly, and hopefully it stays crisp for a long time because it's a lot of information to keep in my head. But there's no real shot listing here. I'm not in prep with the directors because I stay on set the whole time. But it would be really hard. Like they prep the blocking, they decide what's gonna happen, they walk the stage at lunch so they can make sure what the vision is when the episodes come. But for me, I don't sit down and shortlist with them. And I don't think that would be helpful to the way we shoot the show, because we just really, we rotate around the characters so much that until we see them doing it, and the camera movement is not determined until we see the blocking. So what we really do is we do private rehearsals, when we do the blocking and talk with the actors and then see the choreography. And then we bring in so with the director, we think about the shot and we kind of talk through it real quick, thinking, okay, we definitely need that and this and that. Bringing the operators, they see it once or twice, and then, we start shooting it. And as we shoot, we're making sure mentally we have all the pieces. But in the private rehearsal, we mentally putting a shot list, we like talk roughly. But yeah, I understand editing pretty well. I've done a lot of editing in my life as well. And I definitely keep the editing in my head too. And, we do the shot list. So, and, we have the script supervisors behind too, but always make sure we got what we need. I feel like there's a lot of people watching for that, which is great, but I'm definitely keeping track of that all the time as well. Yeah.
No, that's great. It sounds like a lot of fun. Is season 2 happening? And if so, are you already coming in? Like, what's the future? Does anyone know?
We don't know yet. We are crossing our fingers, and the show is doing so well. We're really hoping there would be a season 2, but there's no word on it yet. So that, hopefully we'll know soon, but no, that's not now. Yeah,
All right. Well, keep our
but
fingers crossed.
yeah.
I'm reluctant to take more of your time because usually this wasn't. I think this was only supposed to be like 20 minutes, and it's like 40.
I don't
Um,
mind. I mean,
no, it's great. No, I mean, look, I could talk. I could talk about this a lot longer, but I did want to ask, like, well, I don't know, your influences and things like. There's a lot of standard questions that I'm sure I could ask you. Um, did you study documentary cinematography for this piece, or did you kind of go at saying like, I'm gonna let the show dictate how it, you know what I mean? Like, because sometimes you'd get a narrative film, and they say, oh, I want it to be like this, 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 and you'll go and watch,
Mhm.
A number of different examples of those styles. Here, it's like, are you watching documentaries to get a sense of the camera work, or is it just let's figure it out together?
Yeah, no, I was not really watching anything in particular. I kind of watched, I don't remember what it was exactly, but I kind of watched little documentaries on hospital inside to see the reality and the kind of how close you could get or not with the camera.
Mhm.
There was a documentary on Netflix. I can't remember what it was though, but it was pretty quick. It was more about how much do we want to see and what can we see. I had some influences of the way I wanted the camera to follow, and one of them was 1917,
Mhm.
because we always say we want this show to feel like you're in the trench, the doctors are in the trenches, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, and so, there was this shot in 1917 where you're in the trenches and you keep following and then it keeps going. And that was definitely an influence on this show, the way you are stuck to see and experience what they see behind them or in front of them, but you can never go ahead or too far from them. And I thought 1917 was a great example for that. For the intensity of the show itself, the way they wanted to look real and feel intense, there was another reference that inspired me, which was the bear. So we kind of wanted that the kitchen of the bear would be the hospital of the pit.
Sure.
That was another influence, like on the feeling of it. But it was more about, how can you keep feeling like it keeps going and it doesn't stop, the flow of it. And give the right information within that shot. But I was saying for the pit, we're not trying to do like only long single shot. It's not fully the purpose. It's more, we'll shoot it that way. And we're always hoping they keep the shot as long as they can before cutting it. But we shoot it that way, so we do like the longest part we can do. How much information and of the scene can you get in that shot, and then with complete pieces of what we know we're missing in there. So that gives you that sense that it keeps flowing and it keeps going, even though there's some cuts in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I really can't wait to watch it, and I will let you know. Maybe we'll bring you back once I actually have the visuals under my belt, and so. And then when
Yeah,
you'll
no
know when
problem.
season 2 is confirmed and that you're going to be shooting it. But okay, so I sort of cheated. I watched another interview that you did. You're off to France to shoot something next month?
I was supposed to, but the dates changed, and it looks like I might not be able to do it anymore. So no, I'm not. I'm gonna stay here.
So
Yeah.
change your LinkedIn to say available for work. And
I might take a mini vacation because I just finished.
now, after this shoot, it seems like you deserve it. I can't believe you just finished so recently too. So
Yeah, it was literally last Thursday. So yeah, that was
amazing.
our last day of shoot.
Yeah, well, congratulations. I can't wait to see it, and I'm sure you're going to keep getting, more good reviews. And I feel like there's going to be the funny thing is, a second season of that show is like another day. Is it going to be the next day, like consecutive, like 2 years later?
I am so curious myself. I don't know, and I want to know as well. They don't share too much with me yet, so but I'm really curious. I think there's quite a few possibilities, and I'm excited to see what they decide to do if there's a season 2. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll let you know, and I'd be happy to, if you're willing to, I'll be happy to invite you back so that we can
I would love that.
All right, great. Well, I
Great.
hope you don't get any more blackouts today.
Hell yeah.
Might
That was a
happen.
nice surprise.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
But I've really enjoyed getting a chance to talk to you, and thanks again.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.